Hi guys and welcome. Hi Celeste, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Guys, so if you're joining us live, please let us know where you are from in the world. I seem to be having a little bit of internet connection issues today, so let me know if you can hear and see me clearly. If we do continue to have issues, we'll find a different way to share this information with you. But yes, today we are going to be speaking about death with dignity. It is not the easiest topic for us to take on, speaking about end of life decisions, and the grieving process comes with a lot of emotions. You know, we've all been through the grieving process. I don't think any of us escape that. And so preparing for this, there were a lot of things that came up for me that I needed to think about and consider and just go through and walk through again. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think there is a lot that I can learn from you, Celeste, and I look forward to that. So thank you for joining me and for having this conversation with me.
Absolutely. It was one of those moments where I was like, man, I wish I didn't have so much experience about this so I could talk about moments, kind of the bittersweet of like, oh yeah, I would love to talk about it. And then I was like, I hate a little bit that I can, and it's just kind of those. And as a professional, I think that it's really important to at least be able to have that support for our clients. We try to lead by example in everything that we do, whether it's training or horsemanship, housekeeping, and this I think is one of, it's the toughest part of animal ownership, whether it's horses or dogs or cats or anything, that you have the idea that you will outlive most of the time this life that you brought in. Our human circle of life is so much of, we have kids and like God forbid we should, our kids should always outlive us, but we have this idea in our society of like, any life that we bring in, like we will be gone before we have to lose them. And so when that doesn't happen, it can be really, I think it's hard for people to really truly get that. And I remember my brother loves dogs like I love horses. He's a very big, and cats. He's a very big like dog cat person, terrified of horses, which is very amusing to me. Absolutely terrified. But I remember him telling me when I was getting a puppy, and he sat me down. He's like 9 years older than me, and he sat me down and he said, "Are you going to be okay with putting this dog down?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if our internet clicked on or not, but I was like, it's a little puppy. How are you? Like, why would you say that to me? Why am I having this conversation? And he was just like, because you're going to have to one day. And if you're not okay with that, then you shouldn't take it on. And it really stuck with me. And that was, I think I was like 16 at the time. And it really stuck with me. And it's been that conversation over and over again of that is the responsibility that we take on. And excited, oh, I'm going to have this horse and I'm going to do all these amazing things with it and we're going to show and then not,
And it is actually interesting. There is a bit of a difference between horses and dogs in that many of us, well, probably all of us, when we get a dog, it's for that dog's entire lifetime. We expect to have the dog grow old with us, and we kind of have that expectation. But with horses, there's much more of a, selling them on, and people don't prepare for that end of life period the same way that I feel dog owners might. So that's definitely not true across the board, but there is more of that kind of feeling in the equine world where we're not prepared for the end of life care and then being able to make that decision. So let's talk about, I love that having this conversation. To those of you that are joining us live, welcome. It's really great to have you. This is definitely a different topic for us to cover in that we need to go more into our own personal experiences and our own stories to be able to share the best information with you. So I hope that we will be able to go there today together in a safe place, in a community where we can share and connect, and that hopefully going into this topic and speaking about how we can honor the lives of our own animals and our clients will give us some clarity and some ideas for potentially how we could grieve better, and how we could be present better in every part of our lives, because this is a part that we should be present in, that we shouldn't be ignoring and putting aside, and pretending that it doesn't happen. So Celeste, can you let's talk about euthanasia. Can you share what your beliefs are around putting a dog or a horse to sleep and being able to make that decision to end a life?
Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes down to is quality of life always, and not even maybe just in that moment, but in the future of that animal's life. So for instance, my late stallion Dragon, it was actually in my will that if there was an accident, if I were to die, he was to be put down, because he would not have survived, or in another situation. It would have been too much for him, emotionally. We had tried to do that before in separate situations, and I had kind of made that promise to him that he would not have to go through any other learning environment, and he was so complicated. I have a mare in my care right now that is kind of the same situation. She can be highly volatile, highly aggressive. We have our own dynamic, and I have an understanding with her, and we're okay. But I don't know that if something were to happen to me, if she, not only could she be a liability to somebody else that took her on, but it wouldn't be fair to her to, it could be a really abusive situation if somebody didn't have, because they, especially with horses, it's really our job. I know people don't talk about this a lot, but it's really our job to educate them, to make sure that if they have something happens and they have to move on to a new home, that they are set up well, right? Like they have the ability to move on with a good life. And so if you have a horse in your care that maybe that's not the situation, and I know I'm not the only one, but I know a lot of professionals that we tend to have one or two horses that probably only us should have. and knowing that, that you kind of have a perimeter around not able to have them anymore, I think it's kinder to put them down than it is to keep sending them through the ringers of people. So sometimes it could be something for quality of life. It might not even be pain. And then, there's the normal. If their bad days are outweighing their good days, I don't think that it's fair to ask them to continue most of the time. If there's, sometimes we're in situations of like a heavy rehabilitation place where maybe they're going to have harder days for a little while, but the overall trajectory is positive. That's one thing. But if you have horses, same thing, like I'll use Dragon, for instance, Maze, both of my horses that I've lost in the last couple of years, they had a chronic pathology that was going on that we could support it, and we gave them pain management, and we did environmental, lifestyle, energetic, we did all of the things to make them as comfortable as possible. But when the bad days started outnumbering the good days, that it's, you had to I had to sit with why am I keeping them here? Am I keeping them here because I really want to see them every day? Or am I keeping them here because I know that they're happy and they have a good quality of life? Because as their advocate, that's our job. That's our job, to make sure that they are as happy as possible, as well cared for as possible. And if they are just, those pain days are coming on more and you can see that it's kind of taking a toll on them, I don't personally think that it's fair to keep them. And as a professional that has a lot of clients, I've been there for, I was lovingly nicknamed the death doula, because I'm the one that typically will go and be there with the horses and the clients in that transition time. I can handle it well. I have a lot of reverence and a lot of ceremony around that. And having to have those conversations with the clients is really difficult, because these are oftentimes our best friends. Sometimes it feels like there are kids, there are partners, there are life partners, there are competition partners, and to have to sit with that choice and choose to be selfless in that situation, which is really what it comes down to. Is it's, there are, in those moments, it really kind of feels like you're just throwing yourself on the sword and saying, here, I love you this much. And that's a lot of love, and it's tough.
Yeah. Sure. That is, that's really, really big. It makes me think of dogs that are living with disabilities, because it's so much easier for them to live with disabilities, right?
Yeah.
We can have paralyzed dashies in carts, living great lives, right? Honestly, they can be really happy, living really full, happy lives. But there does come a day when that's not the reality, and it won't be the reality in every home and for every dog and in every situation. And so it can be, when I think about small animal practice and being in that space with a dashi owner, this is just what is clearest in my mind, where they don't feel they're able to take care of a dog in a wheelchair. They're not able to give it a good quality of life. And we're sitting there just feeling, but you can, this dog is happy, he's not in pain, he's really doing so great, he just doesn't have hind leg function. There are so many things we can do for him, and he can live a full, great life.
Yeah.
And so you end up in this situation where what you believe is the best thing as a professional, or what you believe is possible as a professional, isn't the same thing as what the owner believes is the right thing or the best thing. And there are many ways that difference in perspective could come into play. But how do you handle that, Celeste, when what you think is a professional isn't the same as what the owner thinks? And how do you navigate that ground? Because at the end of the day, we do need to be respectful of their decisions. And I recognize that so often that feeling that I'm having is because of a personal belief or a personal whatever, that this is right or wrong, and that's not necessarily accurate. So how would you advise me to change my approach in those spaces?
It's, it's a really, like you said, it's a really tricky one. There have been instances for sure where my personal opinion was that we probably should have let that animal go, and the client decided to keep them. There have been a few and I truly only I think only one or two of these moments where it was bad enough that it was, in my opinion, kind of, it was abusive to keep the animal alive. It wasn't okay. And those conversations are a little firmer to me. If it's something that's truly I can tell that the animal is truly suffering, those ones I'm going to be a little bit more firm with, and I will just respectfully leave the care practice. I can't sit and watch that. And so I will give them my conversations. I'm very good about having very clear, honest, objective conversations. Here's where things are at. Here's where they look. Let's talk about the trajectory. And sometimes people just really are not capable of letting go at that time. And that comes down to the human's journey. It's not the animal's journey. But as a professional, there are times where I might not want to continue being involved in that and feeling that responsibility. And so I'll just lovingly let that go, and I will remove myself from the practice, which is, it's similar to what I do as a trainer as well. It's, I'll help and I'll plant as many seeds as I can. But if at the end of the day, you're going to continue to do what I consider in my soul to be abusive training practices, I won't help you anymore. I can't do that. So it's the same for me for the euthanasia. We're at situations where it's I tend to if I have the opportunity, I let my animals go a little bit sooner than they probably could last, if that makes sense. Because I want them to go out on a good day. I've been there in too many, way too many emergency situations. And a lot of those you can't help, it's the horse is down and they're in the mud and they're colicking, or they're, some horrible thing happened, and that's all you have to work with. And that's not anybody's fault. It's just an emergency situation. But being there for that and having to, you know, the trauma that happens to the human, the trauma that happens to the animal, while the animal is going out in this really, you know, chaotic, stressful, they're scared, they're in pain, like that situation. If I can help it, I don't want to see my horse go out like that. I don't want to see anything, dog, cat, human. I don't, that's not, you know, leaving this realm in trauma is not something that I feel is ideal. And so, you know, I was grateful. Mazes came a little bit sooner than Dragon's Dragon. I knew probably about a year out that we were going to put him down. And I just kind of waited until like it got bad enough. I knew it was going to be that the year that it was. And I just kind of waited and I was like, he'll tell me. But I knew that I was going to do it before winter because he did not winter well. And a lot of horses don't winter well, especially if they have chronic pain, you know, and he had chronic nerve pain and we could manage it for a while. And he would have some days where he was wonderful and he was great. But again, as those bad days started to outweigh the good, you know, we would let him have his herd time. And I wanted to give him as much time, as many pretty summer days as possible, time with his herd, time with my daughter, time, you know, just time. And it was so cool because we got to like almost perfectly manifest how he went out. Like I knew it was going to happen. And it was sunny and he was so stuffed with cookies. Like he was just fat and he was happy and he looked really good the day he went out. He looked really bad the week before. And then like the day of course, you know, you pull him out for the vet and he just looks spectacular. Like nothing's wrong. I'm like, could you look a little more, just could you not look this good? You know? And it's a phenomenon that I've had with horses over and over again. And I know people kind of have, like humans have it as well, but I think it's a bit different. But when the human makes the decision to let the horse go and they're ready to go, it's almost like the day before or the day of, their soul kind of already is like out of it. And they look really good and they look really happy. And you're just like, oh, like, I'm so happy. Like, this is what I wanted the whole time. But also like, it, you know, it just makes it a little bit tougher. But so he got to go out in this beautiful, poetic way. And that's all I could have ever hoped for, you know? And so that's my belief is if we can plan for it, that's what we should do. And we should give them all the love and all of the intensity. And the hard part for that is that you have to be present. You have to be okay with like that feeling, you know, as I cry the whole time I'm talking about it. And humans don't like to do that because they don't like uncomfortable feelings. You know, it sucks. Grief, and it's not even just about euthanasia, just we don't handle grief well. I mean, I know different countries are better than others, but especially in America, man, like we don't do grief. We don't talk about it. You know, you're sad, go get on an antidepressant. Oh, something bad happened, go, you know, go do this thing. Like, God forbid you're just sad. God forbid you just let it out, you know, and it's grief to me feels like this really deep portal. It's like a really big invitation that if you really just let yourself go there, really cool changes can happen for you. You are allowed, it's that ultimate call to presence. Man, it's hard and it's super shitty. But every time I've been able to do that and really go into it, and there's been times for sure that I've been like, la, 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 I don't want to do it. I don't want to do this. You know, I'm not perfect at all. But when I have allowed myself to go there and really be with that, like the things that I got to learn about myself and who I am as a horseman and who I am as a human in holding that space and giving that kind of ultimate sacrificial love to both of them was huge, you know. And I have, unfortunately, one, hopefully last one coming up. It's my oldest, I have an old gelding that I've had for, you know, over half my life. And it's the same situation. It's, you know, he's unfortunately going out similar reasons for Dragon, just chronic melanomas. And he's been really good. And we've managed him for the last year, 2 years on, you know, nerve pain and support. And he's on a really happy pasture and is super like retired, just living a good life. But he doesn't winter well. Like he's a very delicate princess, doesn't winter well. And even in these warmer days where he's at his best, he's starting to not do well. And I know not everybody believes in animal communication, but I do. And it's something that I do. And it's something that I also take myself out of. And I'll have other friends that do animal communication. And that's the other thing that we do is I do have a lot of conversations with them around like, are you ready? Because sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're like, they're truly like, you know, I know that this looks bad, but I'm good. Like, I'm actually good. I'm happy here. I've got a good life. Like, I'll let you know when it's bad enough. And that's kind of what happened with Dragon. There was like one specific day where he was like, all right, mom, like we're good. I'm like, oh, okay, I promised that I would, so I have to listen, you know? And I think having that conversation and those communications with them is really important, and we can't cherry pick those conversations, which is what a lot of people want to do with connection, right? They want to have the connection and the conversation when it feels really good to us, and then when we have those conversations that don't feel so good, then we're like, maybe I didn't hear that. He didn't probably. I was wrong. My intuition was wrong on that one. It's like, no, you heard it. You just didn't want to, you know. So
acknowledge. Yeah, I think that is a really important thing to think about, is if we're opening ourselves up to, if we want that connection with our horses, we have to be prepared for the good and the bad, for all of it, for the highs and the lows. And I think that's a part of our human experience is to just ignore that and pretend that it's not happening, when that really doesn't help us. And we did come here today. I did come here to be real and vulnerable, and to be willing to go into those spaces. And I don't grieve well at all. I like to just pretend that nothing is happening and just carry on with my life as if nothing has changed and as if nothing has happened. And that is something that I've repeated through the most recent losses in my life. And it's something I want to start changing. But standing in hindsight, thinking about those losses, I've had to say goodbye to my mother, and to my dog, who was with me for 12 years. He was amazing. And those were really big ones for me that I just swept under the rug and walked away from. And I have to say, my mother's death really shaped a lot of my beliefs around euthanasia, because I really deeply believe that if we can save our animals any suffering, we should. If we know that the days ahead are going to be hard, going to be painful, just going to be terrible, there is no reason that they need to walk that road. They don't need that. We rather, on a good day, plan it out, make it a special day, be present with them. I think that is one of the greatest gifts that we can give to our animals. So that's really a part of my belief around euthanasia, is that it is a gift that we can give to them. They don't have to suffer. Yeah. Lorraine, thank you for your comments and for being here with us. It's so great to have you. So hard to know if they are ready. So let's talk about that a little bit, Celeste. How can we know that they're ready? How can we advise our owners to know when they're ready? I must say, from my side, there's, we can have all these objective measures, and we can say, look at these things that are quality of life measures, but at the end of the day, if we're looking out for it, I've always found that when the time is right, how do you manage that? How do you help owners to know when the right time is?
I think that, I don't want to be like the perks of my job. One of the things that my clients and I, the number one thing that we work on is connection. And we work on connection, in all different aspects of it, but it's not just from a training perspective. It's from, all of it. And a lot of the work that we do, you were in the self-study, like a lot of it has to do with reading, trusting the horse and reading you and working with the horse. And, it's always really more about that relationship and that connection of doing things at the horse's pace and following their lead and like advocating and knowing when to lead, but like ultimately like only ever going as deep as the horse lets you, which means you're constantly in that state. And so my clients have that as a practice all the time. Like that's what we do. And so in those moments where they want to do that. I can't, I don't, I can't hear it. I can't see it. I don't know, because it's sad, because it sucks. It's a lot. We can, I can sit with them and we can talk about all the different times that they've had those moments of connection. And I can say, hey, like, when you're ready, and when you're ready to like really tune in, try to tune in, and you tell me, like, do you really think that they should stay, or should they go? And most of the time they come at it themselves. It's just, and it's not even just around grief, it's around all kinds of things. We get better at doing our intuition sometimes when that becomes like a daily practice, and that connection becomes a practice. But man, when things get hard, that's when we're training in the mud, right? Like, that's when, oh, I totally believe in this thing, but not here where it's hard. I'll believe it in all these good days, but like over here, no, I have no intuition. I can't hear him at all. I can't, and you're like, sweet baby angel, yes, you do. You've been doing it for years. This didn't change. It just changed because it's hard and you don't want to hear it. And that's fine too. But it's not because you're incapable. And so that's kind of how I handle that situation, is I just remind them, we go back to remembering all of the times where they did. And then at some point their nervous system regulates a little bit and they can tune in and they can hear it. But we have to go through our own dysregulation too. And loss in general, I lost my mom too. That one, it shook me to completely rerouted my entire life. And one of the things about loss, and I'm dealing with it a lot we deal with it with any loss. It really doesn't matter, but especially like my gelding coming up. That's 21 years. I'm 37. I've had him for the majority of my life. And so it's not even just about losing that and losing him and losing that friendship, but it's about like all the versions that I've been in the last 21 years that he's been a part of. And it just kind of feels like, it's like, okay, gone. And that's why losing a parent is really hard, because it's your whole life. That's been your whole life. And you have to figure out, like, what's that identity without, it's tough.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about, that intuition and that connection, because it can be, you have a really good way of talking through it and expressing it and helping people to find it, which is really powerful. Because when I think about it, the clients that I've kind of taken through the process of, let's look at the quality of life measures. Let's think about what they enjoy doing and what's difficult for them. And if we plan ahead in kind of this objective, professional way, and we say, all right, when they stop wanting to do this, to go for their walks in the morning, or they're not enjoying food the same way they used to, or whatever the thing is for the dog or the horse that they love doing, that they light up doing, if they stop lighting up with that, then maybe it's time. And maybe it isn't. Maybe when they get to that point, we reevaluate and we say, well, are they still getting enjoyment from something else or somewhere else? And I've always found, when I go through that objective process with an owner, at the end of the day, it becomes redundant, because they end up knowing when their dog or their horse is ready, just because potentially they're paying attention to that. They're paying attention to their dog in a slightly different way, or their horse in a slightly different way. And I think it is exactly what you're saying in terms of creating that connection and being open to receiving that information from them. You're looking for those signs. And so when they're there, you end up finding them. But having that preparation time for yourself, where okay, this is the decision that I will make when the time is right. And I think there's even more to that. Okay, so which is the next part I would love to talk to you about, because if we know we get to plan this, if we get to plan the day, and how we want to do it and how we want to send them away, how can we do that in a way that honors that life, that allows us to say goodbye, that gives them a good experience at the end? You mentioned earlier that you're a little bit of a death doula. Like, what does that look like? How can we make that time something special?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if that is the right way to ask the question, but I think
No, it's okay. Yeah. I will do my best. I appreciate that you said I'm doing a good job with this, because I'm like, yeah, I don't even know how to talk about this, because it's really tough. Like, it sucks. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to talk about. When you get to plan it, one of the gifts that we get as people is that you get to really, because like, that you're not gonna have them anymore. Like, that, and, there's all this, hallmarky of, like, live your day like it's the last, and don't ever, like, let somebody leave without letting them know how you feel, and, like, there's these, we know it, and we talk about it, we try really hard to do it. It's a different feeling in your being, in your bones, when you know that this really is it. And I think that's, like, the coolest thing. I mean, it's the hardest thing, but it's also the coolest thing, because, like, you really get to love them in a way that you really didn't, and you don't know that until you're in that moment and you experience it. And so that's a really cool gift for us. And so really coaching people through that presence of, like, if you know that they're being put down next week or next month or whatever, go out and spend the time with them and really soak that up, because that's the most present you will ever be with them if you let yourself. And that is what they need. That's what they deserve. They deserve that amount of relationship, that amount of presence, to be like, hey, like, this is it, man. Like, I love you. And I do believe that we get to, work with them in the afterlife a little bit as well, but it's different. You don't get to feel them in the same way. And so we practice that for the human. And then same thing for the horses, going into it, I try to make sure that they have lots of time to spend with their herd. At this point, I've had conversations with them, so I know that they know that that's it, like this is their last whatever. And I tell my herd, and I tell the horses that they're around, or if it's my clients' horses, we do that. And we try to make sure that they have lots of time with them. They have lots of time doing any of their favorite things that they get to experience. Like, think about, like, anything that's their favorite, whether they can only have their favorite treats, or maybe we're going to take them out to the beach for one last beach ride, or walk, or hand walk, or, like, what thing that they really, really love. And we're just going to make this entire end stage about giving them just the best that they can possibly get. And then on the day of, we're getting like kind of my hippie witchy stuff, but on the day of, I do a lot of incense. I do a lot of ceremonial things. I'm Native. And so we do like a true ceremony over the entire thing, starting from the very beginning of the day all the way up until the end of the day, really. But we do it all the way up until the euthanasia themselves. Our usual practice is we sedate them heavily. And so they get really into that kind of that dream state. And either me or the owner, whoever is doing it, as they're sedated, we kind of take an extra 5 minutes or so and just be with them in that space and just really love them and kind of put some energy over them. And then we stay and we do it the whole time, all the way until they're done. And it's a really beautiful thing to kind of to stay with them. I think that's a really hard thing for people to do. I think that it's important for them to do it. And not everybody can, which is why I would get called out to do it. So they'd be like, I can't be there for this. And I'll stay the whole time. And so I stay with them and we love on them, and we do, just make sure that they are so loved and so held and so comforted until their very last breath. And then I'm sure people have seen some of our pictures, but we also then go out and we do ceremony and we decorate them with flowers, and we send their body off in a really beautiful way. The other thing that I do is I will braid in the herd's tail. I'll go through and I'll ask each of the horses, I'll say, hey, do you want to add to this? And I'll take a little clipping from their tail, and then I'll braid that in to the horse that we're putting down right before. Sometimes I'll throw my own hair in it. And just, there's a lot of power in braids in my culture. And so we braid that in and just braid in intention, braid in love. And so they kind of go out with everything is our hope. And then, then we do the flowers, and some people cremate their horses. Some horses, putting horses down. The other thing that's really hard is that, like, what do you do with the afterbody? It's not as simple as a dog. You can't just always bury him in the backyard, and cremation on horses is very expensive. And that's even if you're lucky enough to live in a place that somebody can do it, because that's not always the thing either. I've been very fortunate in both of these places that I've been able to do that, but that has not always been the case. But that also had to be factored in when I put Dragon down, because where we were living at the time, if summer in Washington usually ends at like the end of August, maybe the first week of September. And I got to have it all the way through October 19th, which is unheard of. Like unheard of. And so he went down the last day of summer, and we had to be mindful about it because where we lived, when true winter came in and we would get the really like the hard rains in the winter, I mean, the property would just go underwater with mud. We had certain places where the horses were at that was gravel, but he couldn't have been there. And so knowing like where, if I wanted to put him down in his pasture where he could be happy and whatever, it had to have been before winter came anyway, because I wanted to be able to get him cremated and have him in a place that was good versus, you know, taking him to a vet clinic where he didn't know anybody and was really scared and he had to go out in that scary state. I don't want that for them if I can help it. And so having to plan out what you're going to do with a 1,200-pound animal is another thing that you have to consider, because it's not convenient. It's not easy. But, you know, you factor all of those things in. And I think having a professional to help you factor those things in, I usually offer to do all of those calls. So I'll call a vet for the appointment for my client. I'll call around to, you know, whether it's the body removal services or if it's somebody to rent in a tractor. I've done the digging with the backhoe. And sometimes just taking that load off of the person is a really big thing. Again, not just with horses, with grief in general, you know, it's really easy for people to just be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like, that means nothing. Thank you for your apology, but it doesn't really, you know, but and then if there's this awkwardness of like, well, what do I do? What can I, you know, I don't know what to do, because you can't take the grief away. You can't take the pain away. But a lot of times there's little things that you can do to take the capacity so that they don't have to do as much. So if I can make the hard phone calls, if I can run the tractor, if I can do like the things that are really tough for them, even if it's holding the line at the end, those are the things that I try to do just to kind of lessen the load so they can just be present and not worry about that situation. So
I think that is so hugely that's huge. Because they don't know all the decisions that have to be made. You know, a horse owner that's putting a horse down for the first time, they won't know that you need to do something with the body, and what are the things that can be done with the body, and who do we call? So I think that's really valuable to be able to take that off of their hands. And again, if we're planning ahead of time, then all of those decisions can be made outside of the grief. You can just sit in the, you know, in the goodbye and in that moment, in that time, without needing to make decisions, without needing to think about any of those logistic things. It's kind of the opposite way with people. It is absolutely the opposite way with people. Even if we are preparing for someone to pass away because they've been sick for a long time, nothing can be done, nothing can be arranged, nothing can really be decided until the day they die, when all of a sudden everyone has to jump and make decisions and figure out, you know, what plans we need to make and how we want to do it. And that is extremely hard, and it takes you out of grieving. It takes you away from just sitting in the moment, because you've got to come back into a functional headspace where you can make decisions, which isn't good for us, right? It doesn't help.
It's not fair. You know, it takes away from the whole purpose of being present. And I mean that, and with all of me, I mean, it is not fair. Like, there are so many things about the grieving process that's not fair. I remember, I mean, and this was years ago, but when my mom passed away, it was pretty suddenly. And all of a sudden, it's my mom. And all of a sudden, but now I have to handle everything. I had to call everybody. I had to close her accounts. I had to handle the medical things, which means, but for those that have never had to deal with this, like, then you have to get the death certificate, and everybody that you talk to, you now have to prove that your mother is dead, and you have to be you know, and it's just stupid. Like, it's absolute ridiculous to me that this is the thing that falls on the right after it happens, and it is unbelievable. So yeah, you bet when given the opportunity to make all of the arrangements ahead of time so you can just be there, like, that's the best thing that you can do. And to know that you don't have to be the one to do it. Like, don't be the one to make those phone calls. Have somebody else do it. Those are things that you don't have to do. You can have, always have your options, and your preferences are, of course, always upheld. But man, if you don't have to do it, don't. Like, just be there. And the other thing, I know that was one of the things that you had mentioned with, like, around how the herd and, like, how those horses handle it. So I've done the same thing with braids in reverse. So I'll take the tail of the horse that we lose and I'll braid it into the horses. And what's really funny, not funny, interesting, is they go through a really gnarly grieving process. And I've braided them in, and I just leave them for however long it needs to be left. And typically by the time the braid falls out, they have kind of moved through it and they're back to their normal behavior, which is really interesting. It's like they choose to let it go when they're done. And so I find that to be really beautiful. I always bring my horses out and I let them spend time with the body. I let them sniff them. I let them go through their grieving process. I had my mare went out and just laid next to him for a long time, and I've had him. And so if given the opportunity, and again, it kind of comes down to scheduling, but if given the opportunity to let the body stay for as long as you need it to before being, getting taken away, I think that gives a big closure. You're a mom, having kids, and like when we lose horses, it's so hard on them too, because they love them just as hard as I do.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. I mean, terrified to have them come out and see the body and go through that. And it was like, God, I don't want to screw them up. I don't want to give them bad dreams. I don't want to, all the, like, it's just so hard. But they handle it so much better than adults do most of the time. And what I found with Dragon, and so we did it again with Maze, and we'll do it again for Kid, but when they got to come out, and it's always really hard in the beginning, but by the time they're done laying flowers, they're, kind of laughing and joking about their favorite memories, and like, oh, do you remember the time he did this? Do you remember the time she did that? And they're like getting to love on them and pet them in such a present way, such a mindful way, that by the time like it's done and it's ready for the body to go, there's just this really beautiful sense of completion. I think of like, I got to really just give everything that I could give to them in that moment. And, Dragon hated having his face touched, hated it always his whole life. And he had a lot of trauma. So I never pushed the issue. And my relationship with him was like, there were certain things we had to work through for quality of life and, veterinary care and getting our feet done and things like that. And then there were other things where I'm like, it's fine. Like you get to be feral because you're mine and it doesn't matter, And one of it was he hated having his face touched. And so after you put him down, I just like cradled his head and kissed him and loved his face as much as I wanted to, because I could, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I just got to get all of that out and just, you know what I mean? And it was just the most, and I needed it so bad. And I could just feel him be like, soak it up. And yeah.
Sure. I really appreciate you sharing. I am crying a little bit. Okay.
Well, good. It can't just be me crying on this. It's not fair.
No. I'm thinking about my kids now as well. My eldest is 5, and the most recent goodbyes that he had to give were his rats. We got him some rats for his birthday, and they live such ridiculously short lives. It was horrible. But we had 3, and we had to have them put down in really quick succession from cancer. Yay. And it was, trying to take him through that grieving process. I think we like to hide things from our kids, right? It would be so easy to make up a story and, just, I don't know, brush over it and hide it. And especially at the age that he was.
Just so everybody knows how not perfect I am. My son had a fish that he loved more than anything on the planet. This is like my younger son loves. This is his best friend, right? His name's Thunder. Right after Dragon died. Oh. I go into the room. He's gone for the weekend. He's at his friend's house. And I came in and the damn fish was dead. And I was like, no, absolutely, no, I'm not doing it, not doing it. And so, you know, it's a betta fish and there's a lot that kind of look similar. And I absolutely went out and I bought another fish and I swapped those bodies. And
No.
he, to this day, does not know. And I don't even feel guilty about it. One day when he's older, I'll tell him. And I was like, you know what? No. And I've gotten so much shit for this over the years. So here you go, everybody in, you know, the world that can see this. I absolutely lied to my child. And the kicker was because he knows, like, he doesn't like, he didn't say that he knows, like, I know that his soul kind of knows. He texted me because I was I was out working when he got home, and he was like, "Mom," he's just like, "Did you see how good Thunder looks?" And I was like, "Oh, that's so great." And he sent me a picture, and like, because the fan was like the fin was a little bigger, a little brighter. He was like, "He looks so good." I was like, "That's great, baby." Absolutely couldn't do
No.
it. So, you
Yeah.
know, because we wanna hide things from them, and I'm like, "I cannot possibly let him go through that again. He cannot lose another friend that quickly, like, I'm not," you know, and that's not, you know, probably not great, and it's not my choice to dictate his traumas, I guess, but, you know, sometimes.
I I think you kind of hit the nail on the head though when you said I can't do this. So no judgment from me, but like we are the ones who have to sit them through those emotions and help them to grieve and learn how to do it and be present with them. And sometimes we just can't do it. Sometimes we are mothers
Oh, yeah,
and
no, it
just
was
can't.
really more about me being a
And
little
that's
wimp than it was him.
okay. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
I just
Yeah. I was like,
I'm
"I'm not pregnant yet."
mom.
Being a parent's hard. God, it's hard. You know, you just wanna
It's
protect their little everythings all the time, and that's, you know, and we run into that with our animals, so
Yeah. So let's run through a different scenario, which is more of the like more realistic for dog owners or me with rats. We're
Mhm.
gonna take them into the vets, and they're probably gonna be put down there. And
Yeah,
it will likely be away from their home environment, away from their family, other
yeah.
dogs, other family members. How can we how what are some good ways that we can do that while still for the family that's left behind, other dogs, other animals, humans, children, when they're not
Mhm.
an active part of saying goodbye?
Yeah, we actually had to do that during COVID, which really sucks. We lost our old dog, during COVID, and we, you know, at the time, vets weren't gonna come out. So we're fortunate. A lot of the times our vets, even for small animals, they'll come to our house, which is really cool. But during COVID, that wasn't an option. And they would only allow one person in there, so the whole family couldn't be in there. So my husband went in to do it so I could stay with my kids. And God, it was hard because I've never had to do that. I've never had to like not be there for the end. And it was really, really tough. And so but so what we did is um, we, you know, it got to be a little bit planned, and so we spent all morning with him. I mean, we spent lots of time with him, but especially that morning, we spent a lot of time with him. Fed him like a bunch of cheeseburgers, which is his favorite thing on the planet. And when Danny took him into the vet, they did allow him to be there for it, which was good. And so he went in and he took him in, but he took in his favorite blanket. He took in a couple like the boys' shirts so that he got because dogs are really into scents too. And so he had their shirts. He had a scarf of mine, and so he got to like sit with it. Favorite things were there, all of his favorite things, but like just like the pieces and stuff of his people. And so Danny held him through that situation, and then he took him home, and we got to have our ceremony at home with his body. So we just brought them home, and so the kids still got to be involved, and they still got to be involved in the burial, and they still got to be involved in all of those things. They just weren't there for that particular moment. And so I think that you can still you can still do a lot of ceremony if given the opportunity, if you get to bring them home.
Okay. Thank you. Lorraine, thanks for joining us and being with us here today. And Lorraine says, thank you for sharing. You have lightened my heart and made a difficult decision easier by showing grace, kindness, and love. Thank you. Lorraine, I'm really sorry that you have to make a difficult decision. You're not alone in that. I think, yeah, I hope that we've given you some good ways to go through that and to be present and to make the most of the time that you have. And I think my internet connection has just cut out. No. Hello. Can you hear and see me, Celeste?
There we go.
Hey guys, sorry about that internet disconnection. This is what it is. Morv, thank you for your comment. You say, I value these honest conversations about such real topics we all experience. Thank you for sharing. It's such a pleasure. This is definitely a different, conversation for us to be having, but so, so important. And I'm glad we have a few more minutes, Celeste, because I think it's important to touch on, as professionals, we're not always there with our clients at the end. So I actually really like that within this conversation, we've been able to speak about so many blessings that come with this time. And I really do want to say it like that, because even though this is difficult, there are, the gift of being present in that time, the gift of grieving, the gift of being able to say goodbye, the gift of being able to plan it ahead of time and make it an experience for all of us to go through and remember. Those are all gifts, and it's good for us to remember that and to think about it that way, because I think it does make sitting in the space a little bit easier. But if, as professionals, we've been a part of a dog or a horse's journey, their rehabilitation, and the owner makes the decision to have them put to sleep, and we're not there, we're not a part of that end time, that end decision, how are there ways that we can still show owners our support? It doesn't, for those of us who have grieved and been through the process, it doesn't mean so much to just have someone say, I'm so sorry for your loss. So what are some of the ways that are meaningful that we can convey to them, that we feel it, we care, we honor the life that we got to be a part of?
Yeah, I think storytelling is my favorite. And again, this is across the board, but I think that when somebody loses somebody that you have been able to be affected by in any way, having the ability to share stories, whether, if the people are posting about it on Facebook, write your own post about that horse, write your own post about that situation, write your own thing, and let them see that it affected you too, because that's the best way to be in it with them, which is versus just like, oh, I'm so sorry. Now, if you don't know the situation and you don't know anything about it, and maybe you can't have that, but in terms of answering your questions, if we've been a part of that healthcare team, if we've been a part of that journey, there is always so much that we can say, and there's always so much that we can, give maybe a story about our own experience and how we were affected by that animal. And then we can also give stories about how we witnessed our human client show up for that animal. And then we can have stories around the animal itself and how we watched their journey together, and good, like, there's so much that you can say and maybe not all at the same time. Maybe, you know, start with one and maybe a couple weeks later do another one. Maybe if you see, you know, 2 years out they post something and or they say something, do it again. Like it's the best way to be in it with them, because I think there is nothing better than like knowing that the soul that you're grieving also impacted other people. It wasn't just
Yeah.
you. Is really, I think that means a lot to them. And I gift giving is like a love language of mine, and so I love trying to find something sentimental that has to do with that situation. If I'm able to get if I'm able to get some of their hair, if I'm able to do something, I try to make them something or give them something. Tara and Shaylee made me this little vase, and it was from, I'll show you, I'll put it up in the camera. It's like one of my favorite things on all the time. But it's a vase that's made out of horsehair, and Tara took some of Dragon's hair, and then she had it braided with some of Oso's hair, so it's both of them into a little vase. And so,
Wow.
you know, there's things like that that just means the world, you know, to know that like other people were like, here, let me, something that I wouldn't have thought to do.
Mhm.
Not everybody is good at spending money on themselves or doing gifts for themselves and doing, you know, things like that. And so if you have the opportunity to do something like that, even if it's, I mean, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It could be like a little keychain, or, you know, maybe you can make them a little
Mhm.
bracelet. I do for myself, and I mean, I have this all of the time, but so this is just a braid of Dragon's hair, and I take it out, I'll braid it into my hair, and then I can take it out when I shower. But anytime I go into anything that maybe I'm just missing him extra that day, or if I'm going into something like this, or I'm like, I could really use some of my boy, I'll braid it in. And it's just a little, and it's free, right? It took me, you know, 1 minute
Mhm.
to put it all together, but I'll braid that for my friends, or I'll braid it for my clients, and then I'll show them how to do it. And there's all kinds of little things that you can do. I think that's really important.
Okay, I really love that. So the storytelling part, that resonates with me because that's really authentic, sharing your own experience, really trying to think about how that owner impacted you, how the dog or the horse impacted you, um, little things that you did together or moments that you shared together, because we do have the best people in our lives in this work. And it's good to celebrate that and to remember that. Thank you, Celeste. That was
Yeah.
a really good note for us to end it on. Um, Little things that we can do for our clients to remember the lives, to honor the lives, and to make sure they know that we are grieving too. Thank you.
I had my this is just an aside for the vets too. I had my vet came out for the first time since we put Maze down. And you know, it was just something as simple. Here we go. I made it this far. It was something as simple as he walked over to her stall and just was just there, because we have flowers hung, and nobody's allowed to go in it yet, probably, maybe not for a while. And he just took the time. He came out for another call, like he was doing stuff with another horse, but he just took the time when he got there to walk over and to just be there, and was like, hey babe, gave a little whatever, and then I think he hung a flower too. Like it was just like a little thing. I had neighbors that I didn't know. You know, we just moved here in January, and I had neighbors that I didn't know that were like, "Hey, can we just come like drop something off?" Like didn't bother me at all. Like just they came down to the barn, and they left a flower, or like somebody left um some Palo Santo spray that was like for trauma to like spray around the stalls if I wanted. And there was just like people came and just like left offerings for her, and I was like, everything meant everything to me. And it's that connection, it's that somebody's choosing to still connect, that it just honors them so good. And that's ultimately what we want with the grief. We just want them to feel honored, and we want to know that that life has been honored. And so when other people just come and are involved in it, oh man, Maeve's on here, she sent me these beautiful flowers. Her and a few other women sent me beautiful flowers. I had so many people send flowers, and it was just, and she had tuned in. It was funny. So Dragons loved pink roses. Like that was the thing. He wanted pink roses at his thing, and Maze wanted yellow. I just kept getting yellow, and none of her tack was yellow. It was kind of a weird thing. And I was like, okay, I guess we're doing yellow. And I didn't tell that to anybody at all, but Maeve and Jen and Rachel, who are all very tuned in women, got me this beautiful bouquet with yellow flowers, and I got it and just like erupted sobbing because I'm like, of course you would do yellow flowers, and you don't even know. But it was, again, it's that idea that we're all so connected if we just trust our intuition and we tune in, and just how spectacular that is as a community. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Celeste, for being vulnerable and real with us and sharing, your own traditions and beliefs and ceremonies and the way that you connect, because I know sharing a lot of that stuff on a public platform, especially for professionals, we don't like to talk about the airy fairy, as we like to call it, and our intuition, but it is, without it, we're useless. And so it really is good to acknowledge things in us and to talk about them every now and then, not just focus on the science, guys. Okay. To everyone that joined us live today, thank you. Thank you for being here with us through this. I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions or you want to share any experiences, please do that. If there are things that you want to share that you think will help the rest of the community through this, people who are going through this themselves, please share those. There are so many ways that we can go through this process, that we can honor those we've lost, that we can honor the people and the animals that are staying behind. So if there's a way that you do it, share that with us so that we can learn from that. It's why we're here. So thank you guys. Have a great day further.
Bye.